Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend-Gard, your host, and I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School and a faculty fellow at the A.B. Friedman School of Business at Tulane. And I just want to quilt. So today we talked to Ebony Love. She is beyond awesome. She is Lovebug Studios. She teaches. She does everything. She's fun and remarkable and amazing, and we get to talk with her. This is part 1 of 2. All right, so we're going to start with, oh my gosh. So what I thought we'd do is just talk about your life, talk a little bit about festival and market, since I totally need help understanding what that was we experienced. And then anything else that you want to talk about. Is there anything specific that you want to make sure that we get to today?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
All right, good.
I did not at all.
That is totally okay. That's totally okay. All right. So because we're preserving these, and I know who you are, but tell me your name and where you're calling from.
I'm Ebony Love, and I'm calling from Northern Illinois. And I always tell people Northern Illinois because no one's ever heard of the town that I actually live in.
And why? How far away why Northern Illinois? How far is that from Chicago? Is that far away from Chicago? Is that why you say that?
Yeah. I'm about an hour and a half from Chicago, so I'm actually closer to Wisconsin than I am to Chicago.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. And what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
Oh, my gosh. I don't think I have a specific, distinct memory. My mom does not. She is not a quilter or a sewer or a crocheter or a knitter. She doesn't do hobbies with her hands. I don't even know. I can't even say that my mother has a hobby.
Really? That's interesting.
So yeah. It's she retired, I think, last year, and I didn't know what she was going to do. Because usually people retire with they're a golfer or they're a painter or there's something that they're kind of in the after. And she doesn't have hobbies like that. So that's been interesting. That's a little off topic, but
no. But what did she end up doing once she retired? What did she decide to do?
She went to Panama.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so she went to Panama, and that's basically it. She's been doing stuff around the house, and I think she put up a little fence around the front yard, and she dug up some of the bricks and put down a new path. So she does stuff like, I guess maybe you could say home improvement, but she's not go to Home Depot, get a bunch of wood, build cabinets. It's like little stuff. So
interesting. That's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't get your sewing bug from your mom. What's your first memory of you sewing or you doing crafty stuff?
So I remember, and I guess any time that I have done some sewing, I have been able to kind of co-opt my mom into doing something with me. I guess the first memory that I have is, I think I must have been about 8 or 9, and I was making these Valentine hearts, and I would make them out of satin, and you could go to the craft store and buy the lace, the lace by the yard or the lace on rolls. I love buying satin and lace. And so I'd make these Valentine hearts and hand sew the lace around the outside because I didn't know how to actually stitch the lace in while I was sewing, I guess.
Yeah.
And I sell those to my classmates. So it's really popular on Valentine's,
Right,
Valentine's
hugely
week.
Popular. You're so entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
That's craziness.
So that's my first memory that I can kind of latch onto with me, sewing stuff to sew.
Interesting.
I've been doing this for a while.
Well, just a little while. Just a little while. Okay, so then tell me, like, fast forward to now, because I met you when you were, well, I knew you before that, but I had the pleasure of having breakfast with you and dinner and spending time with you when you were at festival. So fast forward to now and Lovebug Studios and who you are, and how did you get to doing what you're doing right now? How did you get from the entrepreneurial kid to this, to where you are now?
Oh my gosh, that's such a long story. So I'll try to give you the highlights. So, so I did the Valentine heart things for a while, and then I stopped doing it. And then instead of like sewing, I guess you would call that home deck, home decking gifts, I got into like costume making. So I would make, like in high school, I would make costumes for like the drama department.
You did?
Actually,
that's really interesting.
Middle school.
In middle school?
I think in 7th grade or something, we were doing like the Renaissance festivals. And I remember, we do these like little drama things. And I remember making the most awful costume for one of my friends. And it was, I was working with satin and I didn't use a pattern. And so I didn't really fully absorb the concept of like bias and, give in costume. So when I made this costume, I made him a tunic and I just cut a T shape out of satin.
That's really interesting.
I sewed this T shape into a tunic. Well, he couldn't like move his arms because the sleeves did not.
Because that's very funny. I like that.
Yeah, I remember this. It was blue. Yeah, it was blue satin, and it was it was the worst. But
that is so funny.
So yeah, so I was always doing like costumes without a pattern. I remember in high school we did a Hello Dolly production, and I was in the chorus, and everybody in the chorus, you had to make your own costume essentially, and they were supposed to be like periods, and I picked the wrong period, and so I had this really kind of it was a straight skirt with like a kick out in the back, but the pleat wasn't tall enough, so I couldn't really move in the costume.
I really like that.
Yeah, so I probably, I stopped making costumes for a while, but
that's really funny.
Yeah. So, but I was very much like, don't use a pattern. But eventually I started using patterns. And in college, I would make evening gowns because I used to love going to the opera. So I went to school in New York City. Yeah. And my big thing was like going to the Met and going to the opera. And at that time, I was like, you know what? If you go to the opera, you have to be in a full-length evening gown and a cape, of course, a velvet cape.
Of course. So, capes are very important. Of course. Definitely.
So evening gowns for that. But by the time I got to college, I was actually using patterns for
really
for clothing. And I finally understood the whole bias, fabric thing. But I didn't really get into quilting until my friends started getting married and having babies.
Yeah.
And switched from garment making to quilt making. And I made a quilt for a baby shower once, and just everybody at the baby shower was just so enamored with this quilt. And somebody just said, "You should sell these." And that was the start of my...
And you did. Because you recognized from that point of view, you were an entrepreneur using your skills really early. So that made sense to you to do that.
Made sense.
And you are I have your website up. You are just like, you're like a serious entrepreneur. You're like all in on quilting. And so what I'm trying to understand is the intersection of the business of quilting and people's hobby and kind of where law comes into play. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about sort of your life now and the different parts of what makes up your life. Does that sound like a good plan for the interview? Does that sound good? So
yeah.
So when you describe yourself, first of all, if people are listening and they want to sort of follow along, I'm at lovebugstudios.com. That's your website. Tell me a little bit about the name of your website, tell me a little bit about Love Bug Studios.
Oh, yeah. So the name just, my last name is Love, and I used to drive a Volkswagen Beagle. So that's where the Love Bug came from. And then the studios part is, I didn't want the word quilting in the name of my business because I didn't want to restrict it. I didn't know what my full business was going to be at the time that I named it, but I knew that I didn't want to just have it be this limiting thing. So I just called it a studio because, that could be anything, anything artistic.
Yeah. And so tell me what Love Bug Studios is now. When did it begin? When did you begin it?
So I started it probably in, thinking back. So I think it must have been 2006. And it initially started as like a custom quilting, not just quilting, but like a custom quilt making business. Mm-hmm. So from that baby shower, I started, selling quilts to people and just kind of offering my services. And it was basically, you could choose the fabric and kind of choose a theme, and I would design a quilt for whatever you wanted. One of my first commissions was it was like a commemorative quilt for a teacher who was retiring. And so people gave, sayings, and they had pictures that they wanted incorporated. So it's like a memory quilt that I put together. So I remember the company that I was working for, one of the vice presidents was a godfather to his adoptive niece. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted a quilt for her to kind of commemorate her adoption and stuff. So they adopted her from China. So I looked up things like where the province where she was from and the meaning of her name and all those things, and kind of incorporated it into a quilt. So those were really fun, kind of to do. But I think what I realized over time, and I'll tell you about kind of the thing that got me out of the custom quilting business entirely, was that, you really have to recognize that the quilts are not yours. They don't belong to you. Yeah. They belong to the person who commissioned them. And so whatever it is that they want, you have to basically deliver it. And I remember I made a quilt for someone, and after I finished making the top, she wanted me to incorporate pictures of a cat onto this quilt. And mind you, I had already stitched the whole thing. And so she wanted me to basically superimpose pictures of this cat on top of the quilt. And I really I balked completely at that idea. And the pictures that she gave me, it wasn't like they took this cat to Olin Mills and, got professional photos taken. These were candid shots. Some of them were blurry. Some of them were just, really cracked backgrounds and, all of that. And so I was just like, I don't want to do that. I actually got into an argument with my client over these cats.
These cats.
Yeah, it was really bad. But we both kind of cooled down, and, the next day I realized I was completely wrong. This was her quilt. It wasn't my quilt. And if she wanted pictures of the cat on the quilt, then that's what I needed to do. Yeah. And so I did it, and she loved it, and she was really, happy and pleased. And that was the last custom quilt that I ever made for anybody. So I said, I have to find a different way to kind of express my artistic ability and make money without it being fraught. I can't do this, because, they're my quilts.
Right. Right. That's really interesting. So can you help me? You do so many things. I don't even know where to begin. How do you make, can you sort of break down kind of what percentage of your time is going to what activities, and sort of how important is it? I mean, when do you sleep? No, I'm just kidding. I don't. So tell us a little bit about your business now and sort of who you are in that sense of because you've learned. Yeah.
So the business now, and I don't mean to keep interrupting you. I'm just so excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm excited too. This is really great.
So the business now, so one of the things that I also realized is that if you're making custom quilts for people, it's a one-to-one transaction.
Yeah.
And, and so recognizing that, like, you really have to, quilt making, it takes so much time.
Yes.
That if you're really going to kind of do that as a business and have that be a life-sustaining business, you have to, either make an awful lot of quilts or charge an awful lot of money.
Right.
I tell people, to make money in this business, you'd have to be Oprah's quilter,
I know.
Oprah
I mean,
already has
the economics of like the quilting itself, not long arming, but quilting, it's like, it's impossible. It's not a way to make money. I mean, unless you're really catering to a crowd that can afford it. Is that right? I mean, like, really afford it.
Exactly. You do high-end things, or you do things that are like really economical and repeatable fast, which is why you can get a quilt at Walmart for like $60, right? They've figured out the economics of that.
That's right.
Practice. But for me, I realized pretty quickly that you have to get more bang for your buck. And so you have to have, I realized pretty quickly that it was the intellectual property aspect of it. So this is kind of where legal, the legal kind of point falls in, which is you have to be able to do something once and get recognized for the intellectual capability rather than the result. And so pattern writing kind of the natural, foray where I can make a quilt and write a pattern, and the quilt that I would make would just be, it's kind of the idea, the expression of the idea, and the pattern is the instructions for someone else to do it. So instead of me making the quilt, why don't I teach other people to make the quilt? Make your own quilt.
Right. And so that's really, that makes a lot of sense. So making the object itself and making it the first time, the economics is only there if you found somebody who will buy it for a lot of money, which is not really how it works anyway. You're saying by making the first one and then making the pattern, the pattern then becomes the economically more viable. Now, you also sell kits, which I think is really interesting. Do you sell kits of your patterns as well?
I do, to a certain extent. So, speaking of the whole, economics around, like, you have to get more bang for your buck for whatever activity it is that you're doing. So, if I'm making a quilt, I have to figure out, how do I sell that quilt several times over, right? So, it's the pattern that goes into making it. It's some people want the instructions and they want to use their own fabric. Some people want the pattern and they also want exactly the same fabrics that you use to make the quilt, and they want that, kind of in an easy package. Other people just want to shortcut kind of a lot of the process, and they want not just the pattern, but they want you to cut the pieces for them. So I do yardage kits, and I also do pre-cut die cut kits, so that people can just kind of open the box and just start sewing. And then other people, still want a more immersive experience. And so that's why I do online classes. And that was kind of another piece. Like, I do travel around the country sometimes teaching, but my time is very limited. So the question becomes, how can you teach and do it once and kind of have that available? So I do online classes because I can kind of record videos or, pictures and have those instructions and do that once, but have that, kind of be something that's available over a long period of time that's repeatable over and over again. So,
and that's super huge, right? I mean, like, all you have is your time and your humanness, right? And it's like, where are you going to put that time and what's going to make the most sense in terms of both what you enjoy, but also the economics of it. I think that's super, super smart. Now, where are you doing the classes? Tell me about your online classes.
So my online classes, I host them on my own website. So I have software that I use in conjunction with my website that stores the classes. So some classes are free or they have like a low cost, but people purchase them through the website and then they get access to that particular class. So a lot of the classes that I do are actually mystery quilts, and I use kind of the mystery quilt concept to kind of teach people new skills through the mystery. So they don't know what they're making in advance, but every week they get a new block to make, and it's got, something, whether I'm teaching them to reinforce their skills on half square triangles, or they're learning to embroider, or they're learning to applique, something like that. I try to incorporate different things into those classes, so that it's not just, here, make 5,000 half square triangle units and I'll see you in 2 months. It's like
right.
Trying to build on their skills while revealing a quilt over time. So
now, so I'm at your mystery quilt, this page for the mystery quilts, and I think what's really interesting is that they have themes, and they're themes like Little House on the Prairie, Downton Abbey, so are you, like, let's say I wanted to do a mystery quilt. Could I start any of these at this time? Are they asynchronous, or do they happen at a particular time? Like, how do they work exactly?
Yeah, so the ones that are listed now, all of them are basically, they're available on demand. So I do start mysteries like at specific points in time. And so the people who are participating in them kind of in the live version kind of get the blocks revealed to them as they go. Where if you were to, let's say you signed up for Little House on the Prairie now, if you signed up for the class, you would have all the lessons available to you all at once. Now, you could still make it a mystery, because I don't post finished pictures in those classes. So it could still technically be a mystery to you, as long as you don't go searching on the internet for the final quilt. So but you'd have to kind of guide yourself through that, because you're working at your own pace, essentially, after your own pace.
All right. So what I love about this is, first of all, you have a scholarship fund, which is adorable. Where does the scholarship fund go to?
Oh, gosh. So that was actually, so there's a little bit of a story behind this. But my very first mystery was free. And that is not a sustainable business model. Yeah. I'll just, say that.
Right.
So the next mystery was, I think it was $18.95. And, and so every time I did a mystery, I learned a little bit more about what my actual costs were.
Yeah.
How much time it was taking, how many people were enrolled. And I came up with a cost model to kind of figure out how much my classes were. And I actually struggled with this for a couple of months. And I went to a business summit. It was the Creative Arts Business Summit that Morna Galitz runs. And, my big dilemma that weekend was, I don't think I'm charging enough, but I'm really scared to raise the price, because I had gone it was $18.95, and I think the next one was $28.95. Where do you go from there?
Yeah.
And somebody said, your classes should be at least $100. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Go from $30 to $100. What is that? But I actually sat down and looked at how much it cost me to stand up that website, how much it cost me to record. I think the Little House on the Prairie one has 80 videos.
Wow.
There's 80 3 to 5 minute videos in there that takes you through every single step. So how long is it taking me to produce, these mysteries, and how much time that takes out of my business, and how many people are enrolled, and what's it going to take to turn a profit? So I had this whole formula, and the classes have to be at least $100 to make them, to make them a viable part of my business. And so I struggled really hard with, raising the price from 30 to 100. I think Little House, eventually it ended up being $128, $29. And so I wrote a blog post that I think it was the real cost of online classes, where I actually explained, here's what it takes for me to put this on, and this is why the price is here. And actually one of a couple of people had written to me and said, a way to kind of soften the blow is can you offer a scholarship? And I'm like, well, how can I subsidize, this? somebody had actually written to me privately and said, hey, is there any way that I could pay more for the class and you could put that toward someone else who maybe can't afford to take the class? So that scholarship fund is actually funded by other participants in the class. So they're able to, kick in a few extra dollars over, when they take the class. Some people, I usually have a pre-enrollment discount, and some people will take that pre-enrollment discount and put it toward the scholarship. So if I give like a $25 discount, they'll buy $25 in scholarship funds. So that helps. It's not like, hundreds of people get scholarships. Sometimes some don't have enough in the kitty to do any. And the scholarship, it only covers 75% of the class, because I always believe people need skin in the game. So, so it might reduce the class to where you're paying like $30 or $40 for the class.
So how many are usually taking your classes now? Like how big a group are you getting?
Yeah, so now that they're over $100, so just for perspective, my first free quilt along had over 3,500 people.
Wow, that's amazing, right?
It was,
that's insane. All right, keep going.
Massive. And so, now that we're in kind of the 100 plus range, I could have anywhere from, 80 to 120 people signing up. So it's vastly different, you know, but 3,500 times 0 is 0.
Well, also that's just a lot to manage, I would imagine. That's a lot. Now, how do you think how did you build up? I mean, and then also 80 to 100 seems manageable to me. I teach a class of 85. It's still a lot of people, between 85 and 100 every year. It's still a lot, but it's manageable. Is that the way you feel about, how do you feel about the numbers?
Well, I have to say, like, that very first quilt along, I did not expect that kind of a turnout. I think the previous event that I had done that was not a themed mystery, it was just like a regular quilt along, like hosted on the blog. I think I had like 200 people sign up for that. So it was like, that to me was like amazing. So when I did the first Downton-Abbey mystery, I thought maybe I would be able to double that. So I get like, 400 to 500 people. I was really excited about that. And when 3,500 people signed up, it actually overwhelmed me.
I imagine.
I shut down my business, honestly, because just from a support standpoint, I was getting, emails and phone calls and emails and phone calls, and it was just, and I was working full time. I still work full time, now, but I was working full time, and there was no way to handle that kind of volume.
That's amazing.
I thought, and it was just me, I had like a couple of friends that I could kind of, lean on. Sometimes they would come over to help a little bit, but I didn't really need a lot of help until, until that quilt along. And I got a phone call from a woman one day. Her name's Sherry McConnell, and we got to talking, and, I don't remember how this came up, but I started talking to her about how overwhelmed I was and how, like, I was really worried about running this thing, and it was going to shut business, and she offered to do customer service for me. So I was able to forward the phone calls and emails to her, and she started kind of getting people organized and all of that. But it was really crazy. So the other thing that happens, when you do a free event, and I know you might have to cut this out, but when you do a free, something free, like, there's so much entitlement that comes with free.
Isn't that interesting? I understand that. That's really interesting. I'm not sure why. Why do you think that is?
I don't understand it to this day. And, when I went from the free event to the paid event, so it was free to $18.95, I got so much hate mail from that, and people saying, like, there's no way they would pay for something that had been free, like, just a couple of months before. Like, it was really awful, and how greedy I was, and, just all of these things. And, like, that free mystery, it almost I almost had to close my business. Like, there was no revenue coming in.
Right.
I had all these stuff to do, and I have to ramp up customer service group. Like, it was really crazy.
Yeah.
And so, but there's just so entitlement to free, and I, eventually I got the attitude that, if you're going to yell at me, you're going to pay me first. So.
Well, I mean, I think it's really interesting because, we've only been doing this a year, and I have the support of the university. But it's still it's not sustainable if we're not careful because, I mean, first of all, things are expensive. People don't understand that it does take money to do stuff. And then secondly, the emotional toll is, I mean, it's lovely. I love all the people, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot. There's a lot coming at you all the time. And people, I mean, again, I don't want people to go away. That's not what I'm saying. But I can't even imagine having 3,500 people show up to something that you hadn't really planned on that. Because you would organize it differently as well, right? If you knew that, I mean, absolutely. It would just be really, I don't know. So what year was this happening, this 3,500 people coming to your... So, I have a theory, right? I have a theory about quilting at this point that you... So I'm curious, when was that first mystery quilt? I mean, the second one when you were... What year was that?
That was in 20... I think it was 20... it was over like a winter, and I can't remember if it was 2012 to 2013 or if it was 2013 to 2014.
It's really interesting.
I do remember that I had also been I'd been very ill. And so I was dealing with illness and
that's really hard
too. I think the respiratory infection, all of this stuff, kind of happening. What's tough sometimes, I think, with our businesses is that we're brands, but we're also people.
Yeah.
And life happens.
Life keeps going, right? Yeah. So, and then suddenly you have all these obligations, but you're just only one person, right?
Yeah. So that gets very, very difficult sometimes. And I do struggle with that, now as well. But it's hard to be like a brand and a person because people have expectations for how brands or how businesses should be. Yeah. And when you're one person, it's hard to keep up that, appearance, or it's not even just an appearance. It's living up to that expectation that people have where if you're a small business, they also expect you to behave as though you're a corporation with, 50,000 employees, immediate customer service, and the phone calls always get returned and the emails always, get responded to. And that's
it's a lot. It's just
a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. It's constant. It's really interesting. Well, my theory is that those that started around the time you started, it's a particular time in our world with the internet, and you captured something. And everyone I talk to who are a really big deal at this point, start when you start. And there's just a hunger out there for you become these things because of sort of when you start and how aggressive you are in terms of using new technology in a way that when I interview, it's Jenny Doan and Tula Pink, and it just goes on and on. The list goes on and on. You all start around the same time. And you become these things. And it's really interesting that it's this 10-year progression, but you all start around the same time to be building these empires that you have. So it's very interesting that I don't get I started in 2009, I started in 2012. No, you all start around the same time. And then you kind of blow up in this amazing way as people learn to use the internet to create things and to take classes and to be part of communities. You're there, so you become one of the main activities and attractions. It's really interesting. Does that bode with your experience?
Yeah, it's interesting how I think at the time, in that 2012, 2013, space, quilting, people were quilting the internet. Certainly the internet was a thing, but I don't think, I know I didn't really recognize the potential of video. Yeah. I had a YouTube channel and I had a ton of videos there, and I was getting, getting people to watch, but I didn't recognize that in the same way that like Jenny Doan and her, and her family did, or the way that like I knew social media was a thing, but I wasn't, at that time, I couldn't really grow an empire, right? I was working full time, and I didn't really, having only seen these like free experiences, like that wasn't, like I said, that's not a business model. And I don't think I recognized early enough how to turn that revenue on as quickly.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to figure out. I mean, that's where we're at now. Like our next year, we're supposed to be figuring out revenue models and how to become self-sustaining. That's our mandate from the university. And, you think, okay, well, that's interesting and really difficult. We'll get back to that. But can you break down kind of the economics for me of how much is like, where does the revenue come from with your company? Is there a percentage you're teaching, you've got the mystery quilts, you've got the kits, you've got the fabric. Do you have all of the kits and fabric when they're ordering it, or have you bought the fabric already and you're making kits, or sort of tell me more about sort of the shop?
Yeah. So I have to say, like, back when I was making like just random, YouTube videos and all of that stuff, like it was like, that was pure education for me. And I didn't see like, how do you turn that education into something that people would be willing to pay for? Right. So I had this very, like, it's almost like I drew a line between like the education and the stuff that people would pay money for. And over time, like that's kind of blended, into where, what teaching people has value, teaching them a skill has value, and there are people who are willing to pay for that. And so those are the types of people that I try to attract to my business, the people who see value in learning a skill or perfecting a skill or having an experience and, all of that. And so, so with the kits, I do not buy fabric unless I know that fabric's going to sell, at least from a mystery standpoint. So
do they do like pre-sale on kits? Is that what you do? Is that they? Yeah. I
do. So I do registration probably 2 to 3 months in advance of when the event is going to start. Yeah. So how many kits? How many people want yardage kits? How many people want die cut kits? And I try to give myself enough lead time, for that. Now, certainly I buy a ton of Kona. Like if you look at my Instagram, I have like a Kona wall, right? Yeah. That's not necessarily for kitting purposes. So it's not that I never buy fabric unless it's in a kit, but for the themed mysteries, I order bolts based on what's been pre-ordered. Got it. And sometimes I end up with extra kits. Like, so, because you can't just say like, I want a bolt of 10.5 yards, right? Like you're getting 15 yard put up no matter what. So if I have fabric that only is used a quarter yard in a quilt, in a mystery, then I have to order the whole bolt, and I might still have, fabric left from that bolt. So, but I always pre-order. I take pre-orders for kits, and I only order based on what's been reserved. Yeah. So, and what's interesting, so I had, I think it was because I've done like 4 or 5 downton-abby, quilts. And at one point I was talking to Andover, and I had placed, I think we ordered something like $10,000 worth of fabric, which is a ton of fabric, That is a huge, enormous amount of fabric, like for one specific event. I was talking to them about something, and I was like, I know I'm not like, a regular shop or anything. And they're like, you just placed a $10,000 fabric order. You are a fabric shop.
That's amazing.
You can expect certain things when you're placing those kinds of orders. And so, that just kind of hit me one day, like, and that's one of the reasons that I had to actually move the operation out of my house. I got like something like 18 boxes, and they had like 9 or 10 bolts of fabric in them. So my garage like filled very quickly with all of these fabrics and stuff. So yeah, it's really huge. I don't remember what the original question was now, but
no. So you do pre-orders for most of the things, and then on your shop you also have other things. So have you purchase them wholesale, and then some of the stuff is like the notions you have. I guess the question is, how much are you buying? Are you buying anything like just to have it, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how does the shop work, I guess, is what I'm saying. You've got the pre-orders, and you've got, tell me a little bit more how it's working.
Yeah, so I think, my shop is not very typical. Typically the notions that I bring in are as a result of the mysteries. Yeah. And so if I introduce, like I use triangle and a square. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to do that in a mystery quilt, I want to make sure people have the tools. I always include like paper templates, but if you need a tool and a tool would help you more, then I'd like to offer the tool as well. So I also do notions on pre-order. And sometimes what I'll do with the notions is, like, let's say I get an order for 12, I'll probably order 16, when I place that order.
Right. That makes sense. So you're just adding a little bit to your pre-order, and then that way you can have a little for your website as well.
Exactly. And so typically what's left in the notions are things that I still have stock of from a mystery quilt, right?
That makes sense.
So I do the same thing with thread. I order thread to match the binding, whatever binding we're doing the quilt. So I'll order, that thread color, and the threads come 10 to a box. Mm-hmm. So if I sold 11, I've got 9 of that color left over. Yeah. So a lot in the shop sometimes is just leftovers from specific mystery quilts. Yeah. Now I do order stuff. There are things that I have that are just kind of like what I would call open stock. Yeah. So my Kona fabric, that's open stock. I order Kona all the time.
And why Kona? What made you like and there's the solids. Are they the solids? The Kona solids?
Yeah, the solids.
Tell me why you like those.
Yeah, so here's what happened a few years ago. I don't know if you heard the story, but there was this brouhaha over CNC Publishing, and there was an author who had written a book, and they'd used licensed fabric in the quilt. Right. And then the CNC made tote bags, and they used a picture of one of the quilts on the bag. However, they picked like a section of the quilt, and they printed on this tote bag. And so what it looked like is, instead of it looking like a quilt, it looked like a collage of this licensed fabric. Interesting. And so that was like huge brouhaha. And because there was like legal stuff involved, and none of the principals really talked about it, there were all these rumors around, like, and ultimately, it was, you can't be careful about using licensed fabric. And so at that time, okay, I'm not using commercial prints anymore.
Right. No, I get it. Projects. I get it. I mean, it's so funny. When we were doing the booth, I was like, it suddenly dawned on me that, like, we were recovering chairs. It wasn't a big deal, but I felt like I can't just, like, recover these chairs and have them you can for sale doctrine, but I felt like somehow we were endorsing or claiming, and so we got permission. I mean, I was ridiculous about it, but I got permission. They sent me a bolt of fabric, and we recovered the chairs. But I also felt like we're putting ourselves out there in this really interesting way that kind of crosses, again, for sale doctrine. I can cover it, whatever, put it in a booth, but there was something weird about it. So you went to solids because you know that whatever you did, you wouldn't have to worry about the intellectual property issues that might arise.
Yeah. So that was kind of like, so there were kind of two things. So one, there's the intellectual property issues that I really just don't want to have to deal with. Yeah. Two, it's the idea that, and again, it's like, how do I get the most bang for my buck. Like this kind of goes to the beginning of our conversation is
Yeah.
I need to do something once and have that kind of pay off over and over.
Right.
And if you're using commercial prints, those prints don't last very long, right? They're
That's
they're
really
out on the
interesting.
market for maybe 6 months.
Right.
So making a pattern cover with commercial prints, your pattern cover is dated after 6 months. So you have to keep making right in like the updated fabrics. And so it had like a couple of advantages.
So interesting.
At the time, Kona had the largest palette of solids. I think there were 280 solids at that point. They're well into the 300s now, but
wow.
They had the widest palette. So if you wanted to create, Kona probably had a color for it.
That's amazing.
And
then you buy it wholesale from them, and then you distribute it. So how big an order do you have to put in when you do an order with, and you do it directly with Robert Kaufman Fabrics, I imagine?
I do now. Here's the interesting thing. So, and this goes back to me like not recognizing how big of a business I had until like I end up with problems, right? So initially, Robert Kaufman has a huge opening order, and at the time, I think it was like $2,000. Now, I recognize that $2,000 is not a lot for in terms of opening order for fabric, right? That's actually not that many bolts, you know, for that kind of order.
Because just in case people, like, how much is a bolt of fabric costing? So in case people don't know what that is, how much is it costing?
So the bolts, it varies from company to company. The typical standard put up, so a put up is how many yards are on a bolt. So a standard put up is 15 yards on a bolt. You're probably paying $5 to $6 per yard.
Yeah.
You know, for each bolt. So let's just say for easy math, 15 times 5 is 75, right? So, so your average bolt is going to be, $75 per bolt.
Yeah.
Right. So, you order 10 bolts and you're at $750, right? So, so like it's not that much fabric to end up, to open a $2,000, open fabric order. So really not that much. But at the time, I didn't recognize that my business was large enough to actually sustain. And it's not just the opening order. You also have to meet a certain, every 12 months, you have to meet a certain amount of order. It's usually not as large as the opening order, but you still have to maintain, pretty brisk pace of order. And I will say, like, solids tend to be cheaper than commercial prints, but
interesting.
And batiks are more expensive than commercial prints and solids. So there's a huge range of fabric, but it's easiest to just say $5 a yard because the math is really easy there.
Interesting.
But I would order actually through a distributor. So Checker Distributors is one of the fabric distributors. They distribute patterns, notions, fabric, all sorts of things. And so you could order Kona cotton through Checker, but it was in a 20-yard put up.
It was more.
So it was more, right? So you didn't have to order, like your opening order was a lot less, but you also could get the variety of colors because instead of ordering 15 yards, you have to order, you're ordering 20 yards at a time. So I limited, budget-wise, and I didn't have as colors. But I went
That's really
to
interesting.
A local quilt shop was closing, and they were having an appointment with one of the Robert Kaufman reps, and she invited me to the meeting. And I'd never ordered, like I said, I never ordered direct through Robert Kaufman. And after talking to them, what they told me is, if you wanted the full collection, like we can do 5-yard bolts for you. if you want more variety of colors, like if you want full collection, we can just do 5-yard bolts for you. So I was like, what? That was like changing. Like, I've been doing this wrong for 5 years.
Yeah.
There was a different option, but it was, I think at the time, like I just felt like I was so small that I can't go to this huge fabric company and get what I needed from them. It was like, I can't do that. So
that's really interesting.
It's been a very journey.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's
Now,
really
the reason
huge.
I have such a variety of component now is because I get 5-yard bolts. So
You get 5-yard bolts, and so you have enough to play with and figure out what you want to do, and then you can make the kits. Now, with the kits that are like the Downton Abbey and the Little House on the Prairie ones, are those particular lines of fabric that you're using?
those are specific lines. And that's actually what got me back into commercial prints. And particularly, so what's funny is like when I, kind of started doing pattern writing, I was totally against using commercial prints, right? And then I designed like this whole aspect of my business based around licensed fabric collections.
That's really interesting. But then it was a choice, and you knew what you were doing. Now, when you do these mystery quilts, do you feel like there's any legal restrictions? Or do you have any worries when you take a particular, like a Downton Abbey or something like that?
So the thing with Downton Abbey is that was so Andover Fabrics, who produced the Downton Abbey collection, they actually had a licensing agreement with Carnival Pictures or Carnival Productions, who produces Downton Abbey for ITV. Mm-hmm. And so they had a license agreement. So I actually was kind of brought in under that licensing agreement. And so as long as the thing with Downton Abbey, because Downton Abbey is like a new recent thing, and there are licensing and trademarks and all of that. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is that I couldn't use the Downton Abbey name unless I was using the Downton Abbey fabric.
That makes
sense.
Right?
I couldn't just, I'm doing a Downton Abbey quilt along and you can just use whatever you want, right? Like that's a violation of the license. I don't have permission to do that, to use their images and their likeness and their, their production copy and all of that without being under the terms of license. So the reason I could call those Downton Abbey quilt alongs is because we use Downton Abbey licensed fabrics. And did
you require the people, so that's really interesting. And it's Andover, right? Andover is the company that makes the Downton Abbey and also Little House on the Prairie, and what else do they make? Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar. They do a lot of interesting licensing stuff, right?
Yeah.
So were you working then with Andover in terms of the pattern, like was it just like okay, you're gonna be ordering a lot of fabric from us, and here's the rules we have, or did you have to sign a contract? Like, how did that work exactly?
So when I initially started working with them, they're basically like, what do you need? So, so that first quilt along, what happened was with that many people, so the 3,500 people, signed up. I wasn't doing kits for that. I was just doing the pattern, and the fabric stores, all the quilt shops, had the fabric. But I didn't tell Andover, like, how I was using the fabric or which SKUs I was using. Yeah. And so what happened is that I used, there were 4 different colorways, and there was one fabric that showed up in all 4 colorways. So it was this massive drop on that one particular fabric.
And you had suddenly 3,500 people going to different places asking for that fabric.
Right. And so
at least they took notice of you. That's one way for them to learn about you.
And so like that line, the demand from, just Downton Abbey in general, I won't take credit for all of the demand, right? There were other things going on, but certainly like the massive demand that was caused by that quilt along caused that fabric line to stock out.
That's really interesting. And that first one, are you talking about the first one or the second one? The one with 3,500 people? Was that a Downton Abbey one?
That was a Downton Abbey.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was another reason for the customer service calls that I was getting, right? They can't get the fabric anymore, and they get the fabric. Right. I can't find this particular fabric, that kind of thing. And so that kind of was the lesson of, okay, I need to work with these fabric companies a lot earlier in the process. Yeah. So that they can kind of anticipate or forecast what the usage is going to be. Anytime I have like a neutral and multiple colorways, I kind of give them a heads up, like you're going to need to produce this, kind of can't just do full collection 15-yard put-ups of everything. Like, you're going to have to overproduce this one because it's going to be in higher demand. So, so that helps a little bit the next year to kind of smooth things over. But that first year was really, you know, like, it was so great. Funny. Like, it's the first option to have, right? Like, you sell a lot of fabric. I think they ended up doing like 3 reprints of that first collection.
Amazing.
It was massively successful. So, you know, but it was like a lesson. And so, yeah, I started talking to them a lot earlier and kind of telling them, hey, we're doing another Downton-Abbey quilt. What's the next line? Right. Okay, this one, I think fabric, I shared the fabric or the quilt designs with them.
Right.
So it's really kind of a collaboration instead of fabric company X produces X fabric and then designer X does this, and it's completely in a vacuum. So we try to work pretty closely together on those things.
That's really interesting.
You know, but incidentally, as my prices for the classes went up, the demand for the fabric went down, right? So you're going from like 3,500 people demanding a stock out to, 80 to 120 people, which is a lot more manageable.
That's really interesting. Now, you're not getting any, like, you're buying the kits at wholesale, I would imagine, right? So then you're doing some markup so that you benefit from the sale of the fabric. Is that right? Yeah. So so in the kits, they get, typically what I do with the standard quilt kit is they get the fabric, they get a full-size spool of RSO 50 weight for piecing, and they get a mini spool, a 200-meter spool that's in the color of the binding. So, and then there's usually like an extra gift kind of thrown in. Like one year when we did Outlander, there was a panel, a digitally printed panel. So everybody got one of the panels in their kit box. So interesting.
And then they get packaged up. And put into a very nice looking box.
Yeah.
And then they receive that. It's like Christmas.
It's like Christmas. It's like everything you need. Now, are you looking at? So when you go to, so we haven't even talked about market. We're so we haven't talked about anything. It's ridiculous. We have we've been on an hour. So when you go to market, are you looking at their how are you planning all of this? Because it seems like there's a lot of timing that needs to go on.
Yeah, so typically, so right now, so what's happened a lot is, like the Downton Abbey, that license agreement I think has expired. So I don't think Andover has the Downton Abbey license anymore. They're not producing that fabric anymore.
Yeah.
Little House on the Prairie, that's not being produced anymore. So these things, the licensed fabric has a lifespan. So if you were to sign up for Little House now, you could take the class, but you couldn't get a kit because I don't have any.
Yeah, you don't have any.
I forgot where I was going with this.
Well, how do you plan it? So when you're at market, are they talking to you about hey, we just got a licensing deal with X? How do you know what to do next in terms of the timing of you're planning it, they're planning it, ordering it, all that?
So what I realized, with Downton Abbey, is that you don't know, and it's Downton Abbey, and I think it was Little House, and then it was Outlander. But here's the thing: you don't know at any point in time what's going to be the hot thing, right? Who's going to have the license agreement? We did Anna Green Gables, and it was actually Penny Rose that had the license for Anna Green Gables, so I had to move to a different company for that quilt salon.
And how are you finding out who has the license agreement for these things?
That's where you go to market for it. You go to market and you meet with the reps. But what I realized very quickly is that, if you're going to build a business around themes, you have to control the theme, right? Because, I could go to market at any point and go, okay, nobody's got licensing agreements for the hottest new thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I decided, and it was a little bit risky to strike out on my own and not worry about which company has a licensing agreement, right? And so in order to be able to do that, I have to pick things that are in the public domain.
Oh, how interesting. You totally need me. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. So are you making your own fabric now? Is that what you're doing?
No, what I'm doing is choosing themes around things that are in the public domain.
Interesting.
So my new kind of series is, I call it, it's the Ostentatious Mystery Adventure.
Ah, that's really great.
It's Austen, Austen. So that's how I spell Austen. So it's Jane Austen. So we're doing things that are based around the books by Jane Austen.
That's really cool.
And so Jane Austen, you know, her works are in the public domain now. Like, obviously, if you pick up a book that was printed by Doubleday or whoever, like, obviously they copyright for that, you know, for that version. Yeah. But just in terms of Austen, the person, the concept of her books, that's all public domain.
Yeah,
I hope.
No, it is. It totally is. If anything published before 1923, if it's published and those books were published, are in the public domain, no doubt. So then, in terms of using Austen as the hook, where are you getting the fabric from? Are you just choosing fabrics you like that are connected, that you feel like inspire that, and then putting your own kits together? Is that kind of the idea?
Exactly. So so Northanger Abbey was, we just wrapped that quilt along in August. And so Northanger Abbey was the first one. We initially were going to use, so Free Spirit was doing a reproduction of William Morris. And so this is right around the time of like that whole thing with Free Spirit. And uses William Morris reproduction stuff. And it's not completely period, right? Because Northanger Abbey, I think, was set in the late 1700s. And the William Morris stuff is like more like 1850, you know? And so it was not the right time period, but it was the feeling, like when I looked at that fabric, I was like, that's the feeling that I want to evoke. I don't care if it's period or not. That fabric inspires me. And so a lot of it's just me going to market and seeing, like Emma's the next one that we're doing. And that's going to be, and that timing is just based on when the fabric releases. And so Penny Rose has a new fabric collection called Charlotte. And,
how cool.
I don't remember the fabric designer. That's really rude, but
let me look it up. Let me see if I can see it.
I walked past their booth, and it called to me, and it's gorgeous. And I was like, that is the feeling when I look at that fabric. That makes me think of Jane Austen's book Emma, you know, and that whole thing. So, so that's what I'm doing now. Is I'm coming up, like, I have a sequence of the books, and I go to market to figure out what fabrics are going to be the next.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Now, market, do you go to both markets or just the one in Houston?
So lately I've been going to both markets just because I have a working relationship with Island Boutique, and I've been introducing some of their fabric collections. And so lately I've been going to both markets, and it's really just based on what product am I releasing new product or not. But I always go to fall market because I'm typically also teaching at festival. Right. And it's like a 14-day junket.
It's so insane. It's so insane. I still feel like I have not recovered. We went for the whole time. Last year but it was different. But this year I went with a whole team, and I don't know. I'm just completely overwhelmed by the experience. I still feel like I'm not human still. It's really weird. It's been a while.
Yeah. So, in this coming spring, I kind of debated because it's really, it gets to a point where you're on a hamster wheel. Yeah. And if you do make a conscious decision to get off the hamster wheel, you're eventually going to, fall off. Yeah. So I debated about whether I was going to go to the 2019 spring market because I don't have a fabric line that I'm introducing there. I don't feel super compelled to write new patterns just to introduce that spring market. So I was feeling like this could be an opportunity to slow down. But then I thought, you know what? Fall market, I never get to walk around. I never get to, like the whole
because at fall market you have a booth at fall market. Is that why you don't get to walk around?
Yeah. This time I had with Island Boutique. And so you're in the booth, or I'm teaching. So I do classes at the
a lot. You teach a lot.
So, so it gets to be pretty crazy. I never get to walk around like actually seeing. I think I was on my way to the restroom or something when I saw the Charlotte fabric. Like that was completely a fluke.
You do start to. It was funny because we had a booth for the first time at Festival. And at market, there was just a lot going on. But I remember going to a booth and being like, I have like literally 5 minutes like, we just have to talk really fast because it was like, there was just no time. It was craziness. To be there for 14 days and feel like you didn't have time to do anything is the weirdest experience, you know?
It's very surreal. It's very surreal. And, your bathroom trips, you have to spot those. Like, anytime, like, when you come in, you have to strategically enter. Like, you never go down aisle. If you have to leave your booth, you never come back or you never leave the same way.
Yeah.
That's the only way you step when you have a booth. And so what it felt like for spring market is, I could go and just walk around.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about that too, I have to say, because I felt like everything was so amazing and overwhelming that I don't feel like I did the things I needed to do at market. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was weird. I came back feeling like, okay, that was a lot, but I don't know how to process all the things that happened. So we are thinking about just taking a really small team, like me and someone else, or just me, probably someone else too, because I'm not really good on my own, but, and just doing it small, like just going. And also experiencing what spring market looks like instead of, like, how big is it? What does it look like? How is it different? Because market's huge and overwhelming in, like, the most glorious way, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I expect it to be a little bit smaller, although it's in Kansas City. So the spring market moves around. The fall one is always in Houston. The spring one moves around. I think we go to 5 different cities, and so they kind of rotate in this 5-year pattern. So we're back in Kansas City, and this is a Midwest location. So I would expect, like, Midwest is a little bit easier to do than like Portland.
Yeah.
Because Portland is expensive for everybody to fly up. I mean, the West folks are like really happy about it, but for a lot of the fabric companies are like based in New York and New Jersey, right? And so for the New Jersey to Portland, it's a huge production. So to me, I think Portland show tends to be a little bit smaller than some of the Midwestern-based shows, but, we'll see.
Interesting. And it's shorter because all it is market. You don't have festival attached to it. So I imagine that also changes the nature of who's there and just it's got to be a little bit calmer. It's got to be, right? A little bit?
It depends on what you're doing, right? Like if you're doing a booth and you're introducing new, it's probably just as hectic, right?
Yeah.
So if you're just like going there to walk around, like I'm even thinking, just going there for 2 days instead of, not going to schoolhouse day, not staying for the last day. Like you can really, if I make my appointments and like set up my schedule for what I want to accomplish, what I want to get done, what I want to do, I think I can do it in a couple of days.
Yeah. That's interesting. That not have to go the full time either. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you give me something to think about. All right, so tell me about your experience we're going way over time. I don't even care anymore. So if you're cool with chatting just a bit longer. So tell me a little bit about, so I saw you and Cheryl Sloboda for breakfast. This was like the day when I was just like, how do you survive? How do you survive? So that would be the next thing, because I don't think I survived market and festival. I think I'm broken permanently from the experience. I just came back a different person. I don't know how to explain that, but I'm moving slower. I'm not, like, everything's weird about me at the moment. So tell me about your experience and how do you survive this thing, and why am I talking about surviving something that seems like it would be just fun?
Yeah, it seems, and that's the thing, like outside looking in, and that's our job too, right? We have to make it look fun, because this is what's business to us is someone else's hobby.
Right.
It's that's what they do for fun.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, like, you can't be, complaining about the awful slog that it is and how little sleep you get and how unprepared you feel, and, all the stuff that, that happens, and, how awful you might feel health-wise, or, anything like that. Like, you have to put on a good face.
Yeah.
And, and make it look attractive. Like, it's supposed to be fun. Like, if we're not having fun, something's
right.
wrong.
It's supposed to be fun and beautiful and easy, and it's like Disney. I mean, it's Disneyland, right? It's like this incredible space of funness. So, like, you shouldn't see anybody crying, right? There should be it should be just a joyful time. But I think, for me, it wasn't that it wasn't joyful. It was just the endurance of it is unbelievable. And I don't have, I'm not a high energy person. I mean, I get a lot done, but I'm not somebody out in the world all the time. And so it's a lot of people, and it's just the physicalness of it is incredible. It's just a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and there's some years that I'm there on a scooter, because just, it does take, you have to be in a certain place, like health-wise, there's a certain level of preparedness that you have to have. And I think the big thing is just the self-care. Yeah. Like I'm also someone who, I can appear very outgoing and energetic and, high energy and all of that, but I have to decompress. Like, there's a certain point where I can't do people anymore, where even, with Cheryl, as close a friends as we are, like, sometimes, we room together. It's like sometimes we just have to be in the same room and just not talk.
No, I get that. It's
right.
Just, right. I mean, it's nice to have another. I roomed with Pam Weeks, the curator at New England Quilt Museum, and she's awesome, and it was just fabulous. And it was our second year doing it. But our room is quiet. I mean, we're talking a little bit about what happened to the day, but it is not exuberant room. It's very okay, what just happened today? There's a real. I mean, It would be like if you, I don't know. I wonder about people who work at places like Disneyland and others. Like, there's an energy that is there. First, the days are really long, and there's a lot going on, and you're seeing friends, and you're making new friends. And for me, I had a whole team, so there's a lot of that is fantastic. But there's negotiating the team and working with the team. But then you think about the energy, like something about that space. There's so much. And that, just the energy alone, you walk in and it's thrilling and exciting, and it completely zaps you of everything your whole life force.
Yeah. You have to be really careful about how much energy and when you give your energy out, right? There's if you have to know yourself pretty well and kind of know, when you can be on and how long you can be on and when you need breaks and, those types of things. And you have to be able to either project a certain level of confidence and exuberance, because if you are, if there's something going on in your life and that kind of is weighing on you there, people feed off of the energy that you, that you project. Yeah. So it's you have to ration. You have to ration yourself.
Yeah.
And no,
you do. You have to ration yourself. And I'm not we've only been doing that. We haven't even been up as a podcast for a year. So we're just this little thing. But I watch you and others, and you have a huge following. And so it's that energy is really interesting too. We got a little bit of it. Oh, we watch your podcast, or we listen to your podcast or whatever. And that was really thrilling and exciting. But I can't imagine being you or Cheryl or Alex Anderson or Jenny Doan, where these people, you have this, they've come to see you, right? They've come to, say hi and be with you. And, again, insanely awesome. That's great. But a lot of, there's just a lot of energy going out. It's kind of remarkable to see,
Yeah, and I think, at a certain point, you cannot go someplace by yourself. And I started to recognize why people have an entourage.
Yeah.
Not the whole entourage, but you have to go someplace with another person, and that person has to be the timekeeper. The one who says, "I'm sorry, we
have to get going."
Stand and chat, but we got to get going.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. Because typically what happens, if I'm walking by myself and somebody runs into me and they're really excited, and I love that. Do not get me wrong.
Hugely great, right? Yeah.
Because, I'm on my way to a class, or I'm late for a meeting, or, whatever it is. And it's very hard for me to say, I'm sorry, I can't stop because it seems really rude, right?
It seems
it's
rude.
Like,
that's right. You
really
got like
excited.
just, it's weird because it's a space like what you're saying is you're conducting business, you're reaching out to other groups, you're trying to make kind of deals or think about things, and then you've got your fan base there that are excited to see you, which is part of your business and is super important. And it's like everything about your life is like just kind of attacking you all at the same time. And it was kind of amazing to sort of see what that was exactly. Like it is a cult of personality, no doubt about it. There's a huge amount of that happening. And it's important. It's an important part of it. Like they want to see you, right? But at the same time, it is just a very full 12 days.
Yeah, it's a very full 12 days. And so what I do, like when I see people, because I guess, technically I'm friends with famous people, like quote famous people, right?
Yes.
Typically what I do is like I recognize that they're probably, it's not that they don't have time for me, but they don't have time for me.
They don't have time for you.
What I do is I don't do the fangirl thing when I see my friends who are like, kind of famous. So I keep it very low key.
Yeah.
Like anything I run into. And sometimes I think like, oh gosh, does that person think I'm rude?
Yeah.
Because like, let's say like, I run into Tula Pink and for me, it's just like, hi Tula, how are you? Good to see you.
Right.
Not like, oh God, let me get a picture with you.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is that you're all working. I mean, it's a work event. It's not a like chill out, hang out event, like that's the thing is it's work. And that's really different than something else. So
yeah.
I was amazed that we couldn't see everybody that we knew. That was like a moment in our project, right? That we didn't see everybody. And that was amazing,
The crazy thing, too, is that sometimes people who live in the same state and near the same place where I live have to go all the way to market to see them.
It's craziness, right?
Like Mary Fawn. She lives in Chicago. I work downtown Chicago. We should be having lunch on a regular basis, right? But I see her. I have to go to Quilt Market to see her. So.
That's so crazy.
And which is funny. I actually didn't get to see her at this Quilt Market.
That's
so
funny.
busy.
It's so funny. Yeah. Well, and then the other thing I found, which is really interesting, is the balance between being in your own booth, because we had a booth at Festival, and being out on the floor. And everybody was getting really mad at me because, like, if I left, then I was not there, but then I had to go do things. And it was very interesting to feel the pull of, like, where am I supposed to be? Where's the – and that it shouldn't be about me, right? That's not what this project's about. But it happened. So there really was a sense of like, you can't leave this booth. I was like, oh no, I've made myself a little prison. It was really weird. I was like, okay, weird, And
the minute you booth, that's when like the deal of the lifetime comes by, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
And then like so-and-so stopped by and you weren't here, and it's like, oh, I really needed to.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little. So tell me a little bit more about, one other thing we have to talk about is sort of your relationship with Island Batik, and you do these die cut things. Tell me about sort of your sort of thinking about how important are those relationships to your business and who you are?
Oh yeah. So Island Batik, like that team is I can't say enough good things about them. They're so amazing. They're kind and they're patient. And I especially appreciate their patience, the grace that they extend me, the excitement that they have around what I'm doing. So I've been doing, and batiks for me are kind of like the balance between commercial prints and solids, right?
Yeah.
Like there's enough design there that, there's something to it.
Yeah.
But if you need to make a substitution, it's not that challenging, right?
Right.
You can usually find that's in kind of that same color, has the same feel to it. But they have this process where they have an in-house designer, Kathy Engel, and she's amazing. And so she does a lot of the chops, and the chops are like the stamp that you do. The batiks are like wax resist, so there's like a stamp. It's called a chop.
Uh-huh.
And she does the chop designs and the colorations and all of those things. And so with Island Batik for several years now, I've been introducing these designer collections. And basically what those are is it's the in-house designer coming up with the collection, and then you're interpreting that collection into quilts and projects and, you know, those types of things. So I've been doing that with Island Boutique for several years. And years ago, they asked me if I wanted to design for them.
That's so cool.
And so I've been designing chops and doing colorations and things like that. So I actually have my own, you know, my fabric line that I design. It comes out in fall of 2019.
That's so cool.
So that's like really exciting. And then I have another relationship where, so I do a lot of die cutting. We haven't talked about
we haven't talked about that. Why do you do, tell me a little bit about your die cutting and why die cutting is something you like to do. What is die cutting? In case people don't know, what is die cutting? Let's start there.
Yeah, die cutting is essentially, if you have a shape, like a repetitive shape that you need to make, it's like a cookie cutter, but different. Cookie cutters are hard. But like if you had like a cookie shape that you wanted to make, like a star, you don't cut that star out by hand. You get a cookie cutter and you kind of stamp it into the dough and it cuts out the shape. So, so die cutting is kind of the same thing, except it's fabric. And it's these razor sharp blades that are embedded, but they're like shaped in the shape of the cut that you want to make. And so a lot of times, you know, it's this whole theme. How do I get the most bang for my buck? How do I use my time most efficiently? Because I work full time. So it's very important. So I work full time, so I can't travel as much, right? So the online classes is how I reach the die cut kit. Or the die cutting in general is how I make quilts faster, right? So I don't have time to stand there cutting out 5,000 half square triangles. Right. That's what I use the die. So for me, it speeds up my production process, you know, to have things die cut. And then there's people who, you know, when I do a mystery quilt or whatever it is, they prefer to just open the box and start sewing. So
I get that. You know, that's nice, right?
Yeah. Whatever reason, whether they don't feel like they can cut accurately or they don't have the hand strength anymore or they just hate cutting, you know, there's lots of different reasons for that. So I offer die cut kits
That's really
as
great.
a service.
That's huge.
So and so with the dies, so there's all these quilts that I want to make, and if there's not a die available, you know, I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit there and say, okay, I'll just cut this out of this paper template. Like that is so not me. So so ultimately I started designing acrylic template, but I had to figure out a way to like, how do I get these into dies? And so I have a manufacturing agreement with Physics where they produce custom shapes.
That's really cool.
So I have those dies. I've got 3 dies available that have like specific shapes, and these shapes tend to show up in my patterns and in my mystery quilts. So it's really economical over time. Like if you're going to continue participating in events with me, you know, it becomes economical to get the die shape versus the, you know, the paper templates or something like that, because you're cutting the same shape over and over again. So I do a lot of die cutting. And that is actually how I ended up in doing long arm quilting, is because I was cutting out so many quilts and finishing so many quilt tops. It got really expensive to, you know, to always send
them out. So do you do long arming services for yourself, or do you still do it for others as well? Can you be hired out to do it?
So I do, but it's a cautionary tale because I don't have a lot of time. And so people who send me quilts
have to be patient.
They have to be patient, right? And, you know, and so it's something that I do offer those services, but it's I'm not fast, you know? And so I usually end up, but that's also a way of kind of controlling your list too. Because if you want somebody wants something fast, they're not going to come to me.
Right,
they
exactly.
Come to me,
I get it. Do you, and you don't charge by the inch, you charge by a flat rate, which a lot of people, so tell me why you went to that.
So I have kind of two pricing models. So I have flat rate and I have, and I charge by the hour. So the flat rate is when you just want the thing stippled and you just want it done. And so it's just, you know, if you have if I'm just doing, not just stippling, but, if
right,
I'm
but you're doing something really basic that is going all over, an all over design. Yeah.
All over, and it's kind of brainless, mindless kind of thing. Then I don't need to I know how long those take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's just because the reason it's like if it's a 45 by 45, you know how long it'll take to do the design. Now, are you doing the design free motion, or are you doing it by computer when you have those?
So it can be either. So, sometimes it's free motion, sometimes it's computerized, but I have a really good sense for, those really basic things that I can just kind of knock out.
Yeah.
What is it? Like a clean is like 6 to 8 hours.
Uh-huh.
So I can, come up with, I think it's typically 6 to 8 hours. So I think this is about how much it's going to cost. So that's the flex. If you want me to do something custom, then I charge by the hour.
That makes sense.
And for me, it's, it became an issue where, if you charge by the square inch, what you don't sort of get into is like, well, what if this person just balled up their quilt and stuck it in a box and sent it to me? Right. I just spent an hour and a half ironing for them.
Right.
So,
right. So you've got the preparing too, that you get that you charge at least $25 for the preparing of the quilt, but you do it by the hour too. Interesting.
Yeah. So it's basically like a way for me to say, like, if I'm going to spend my time doing this, because it's an opportunity cost, right? Like I could be spending my time quilting, or I could be recording a video for a class. Right. So
there's only so much you can do. There's only so much.
Yeah. So that's why I charge by the hour, and it helps. It's usually not that much more expensive than like getting it done by the square inch, but I think a lot of times like the hourly rate, it scares people.
Yeah.
But
I get that.
Skill. I pay a lot of money for the equipment. I've got 2 Hondas sitting in my studio.
Totally.
These,
right.
The long arm machines. Yeah. They're the price of a small car.
The price of a small car. It's true. It's really true.
Yeah. So, so that's worth something, right? My time is worth something. Yeah. So that's what I typically do, but I don't get a lot of, I don't want to give people the impression that I have like this booming long arm business. I don't get a lot of.
That's just not what you're doing at the moment. Yeah. Then let me ask you on batting. What's your favorite batting? Because you have a lot of choices on your site about batting, and I'm really I'm in a kind of space of like, I don't know, insecure about batting. That would be like a big thing right now. Like, I don't know. So what's your favorite batting?
So batting has to feel good. If it feels good on the roll, then it's going to make me very happy in the quilt, right?
Yeah.
So my favorite batting right now is 100% bamboo.
Really?
Yeah. It's the most luscious, creamy, soft. It's just amazing.
That's really interesting.
So I love 100% bamboo. I get mine from Winline. And Winline is, it's like, and I love like plucky small businesses, right?
Uh-huh.
So
what is how do you spell that? Winline?
Winline.
Okay. Winline bamboo batting. Okay.
Yeah. It's amazing stuff. Like, and she goes from show to show. She brings her rolls of bats, and it's amazing. But I remember one year, so I love her bamboo batting. And when I'm doing a quilt, because the bamboo batting isn't, it's not a high loft, right? It's more like, it's kind of like an 80-20, just in terms of like the loft, like that sort of sub quarter inch. But if I'm doing something that's dimensional, like I was having to layer the bamboo with something else to kind of get them. And so I went to her when I remember this. It was like I went to a spring market and I told her, hey, I'm having to double up these bats because I want more dimension. And so I was telling her, I was like, I love your bamboo. I just wish it were a little bit thicker. And the very next market, she had developed a 6-ounce double bat.
That's so cool.
So it's amazing. Like, small businesses are like, what's great about small businesses, you can tend to get things done faster.
Yeah.
Right?
No, yeah. I know that from my other life. It's really interesting. We were working with this mammoth company my other life talks about duration and copyright duration, and so we were this teeny tiny company, and we would do stuff, and they would be like, well, we want this change. We're like, okay, we can do that change. It'd be like 20 minutes later, we were like, we're done with the change. Like, that's great. And they're like, well, it'll take us 3 weeks to get the change on our side through everything.
Right.
It was like, okay, well, I guess we didn't need to rush. That's very interesting. Very interesting. So yeah, so we'll have to interview them. That's really interesting. They really look.
Yeah.
So you usually use the 100%, the Winline 100% bamboo. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's one of my go-tos. And then the other one is there's an 80-20, she does an 80-20 as well, but there's an 80-20 from Legacy by Pellant. And I like that one too. So I kind of go back and forth between Legacy and Winline, but yeah, I always go to her for the bamboo bats because her bamboo is just really amazing. But 80-20 is also kind of the go-to. So.
And why 80-20? Why? For those that don't understand what you're saying, what do you mean by 80-20?
Oh, so it's a blend. It's 80% cotton, 20% poly. And so you're kind of getting the thing with, and I love like natural bats, but typically if you're getting 100% cotton, you can't quilt as far apart. You have to quilt a little bit closer. So an 80-20 blend lets you quilt further apart. And typically why I pick that is because I don't want to have to make a decision about what the quilting design is when I'm choosing batting, right? So I just want to have the widest option available. So by picking an 80-20, I think the specs on that is you can quilt 8 to 10 inches apart.
That's really interesting.
On the leg.
And so you don't feel there's like this crazy trend of like quilting things like way, way, way quilting, like quilting it to death kind of thing. Do you feel like that's like, how do you feel about that sort of thing? Has that always been the case, or is that like a thing right now?
So here's how I treat that. And for me, initially it was like, you're showing off your long arm quilting skills, right? When you quilt something to death. Sometimes it's in the quilt, but honestly, now that I'm pattern writing, and I had a quilt once that and it's amazing, it's still like my favorite quilt. It's this it's called Sewing Bee, and it's these little bees buzzing around, and I use hexagons, and it's just the cutest little thing, and it is quilted absolutely to death, and it's amazing. And I had it in my booth once, and the quilt is very simple. It's giant, like 9-inch hexagons, right? You just piece the hexagons, and then there's like a panel that's like, it's like 30 inches wide by like 60 inches. So like the quilt itself is very simple, but the quilting on it is really amazing. And I remember that I was hanging in my booth, and I overheard conversations from people passing by that they could never make that quilt because it was too hard. They could never be as amazing as the original. They would always be disappointed because they couldn't like that. They couldn't replicate the quilt. Yeah. And so that made me think, what is the quilting for? Yeah. Am I selling my long arming skills, or am I selling the pattern and the fabric?
I really like that. That really makes a lot of sense,
So these days, I don't do a lot. Sometimes I will do kind of like the fantasy projects. Like if I know it's destined for a magazine, right? Or something, like I'll time. But most of my quilts these days, they get just all over edge-to-edge designs that complement the quilting, but they're not like, it's like the background. Because what I want you to see is the quilt, and I want you to think that quilt is doable because I want you to make it. Right. I don't want barriers and obstacles to you making the quilt that you want.
No, I totally get it. Yeah. I totally get it. So fascinating. Okay, well, we've talked an hour and 44 minutes, and I feel like we didn't cover everything. It's not good, Ebony. It's not good. I have like 1,000 more questions.
Well, then you interview me again.
We're going to have to do it again. It's true. It's just I got to hang out. So yeah, I mean, I just think you're amazing and heroic. Now, one of the questions is you keep talking about that you have another full-time job. What else do you do, or do you rather not say? What else do you do?
So I am a project manager for a very large corporation.
So that's so it's interesting, like the skills people bring to their life, right? Like the fact that you can do as much as you can do is in part because that's what you do professionally, is manage a whole bunch of stuff. Is that right?
Well, it's interesting because it's like I feel like I'm much better managing the projects for these major corporations than I am at managing my own. Like, yours are always like on time and under budget, and mine are just like, what's a plan,
right?
Schedule,
right?
Kind of a thing. Yeah, I have an engineering background, and I work in technology. So I basically manage technology projects and kind of bring those things to life. But,
amazing.
Yeah. So it's, you'd be surprised at how many people, work, full time out of the industry or have other jobs. And, the reality is that for this to work, I need health insurance.
Yeah.
And where are you going to get health insurance? You have to work for a big company. So, it's kind of a sad state of, kind of being in the U.S. and kind of having, having healthcare be a reason why you have to work outside the home.
Yeah.
I think that's reality for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. That's so bizarre, isn't it? I mean, so do you feel like, would you want this? I mean, would you sort of, so this is extra it's extra work, it's extra income, it's extra because you've got your base of what you're doing. Do you think that helps you in some way in terms of making decisions, that you're not like, I have to sell 4 more bolts of, 4 more threads today, or I'm not going to make rent. Like, is there a difference between, I don't know, how do you, like, I think this world is really interesting because you've got so many layers of different people that are totally committed like you are, still have a full-time job, others that do not have a full-time job, that this is their full-time job. What do you think, what are your thoughts about that, about the economic working side of this business?
Yeah, well, I've had the opportunity to kind of see it both ways. I worked for a very long time in industry. I was laid off from that job and saw it as an opportunity to kind of go big, with this. And, I was, doing quilting, this quilting business full time for 2 years, like almost 2 years. And what I recognized very quickly is that it's one thing to have a business that supports itself. It's another thing when you need the business to support itself and support you.
Yeah. Right.
Those are like 2 different kind of economic positions. And I realized that while my business is able to support itself to a certain extent, it wasn't in a position to support itself and support me. And the thing is that, like, for your business to be successful, it has to turn a profit. It has to be able to pay the taxes. It has to be able to pay its expenses. And you need cash flow, right, to do new things. Yeah. If you're worried about that, plus you need to pay the mortgage and the property taxes and the electricity and, and food and healthcare and all of that stuff, it adds up pretty quickly. And I was able to do it for 2 years. And honestly, I think I tried it just a little bit too long. Like, I probably should have done something different in about, 14 months, so, it's very challenging. So I can people who, who do have to do this, where this is their livelihood and the only thing that stands between them and,
it's brutal.
Living in their car. Yeah. Like this, it's a luxury, honestly, to be able to run your.
Well, and I really still am thinking of, this is a very huge industry with a lot of money involved and a lot of people spending money, and yet I can't really see, like, it isn't like I don't know, where's the money? Like, right? So why is it that so many are struggling? Why is it so hard for shops to make money? Why is it so hard for, like, that you would do it for 2 years and be like, yeah, this is not what I want to be doing. I'm just really curious. It's a really interesting industry in that way. It's not, like, on a personal level, very sustainable for anyone, except for very large people. But I don't even know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't even presume that. So it's weird, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's like any other, you know, to me, it's like any other creative industry, right? Like there's the people or the people who, there's very few people at the top. Like it's a microcosm of the whole world, right?
Yeah.
There's a few people at the top who make the tons of money, and then there's the thousands of people, you know, at the bottom who make hardly anything, and there's the people in the middle who, you know, can kind of get along and you know, be okay. And part of it, I think, is that people don't realize that their businesses are not profitable.
Yeah.
You know, they, you know, and a lot of times it's, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but a lot of times I think it's the people who do have these alternate support systems.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, it took me leaving that cushy job to recognize that my business isn't enough to sustain itself and me. You know, like it can do one or the other, but not.
Yeah.
And there are
people
who can have it do, you know, both of those things and also support employees, those things. And then there are the people who don't look at the actual economics of their business to see that their business is actually not that viable.
Yeah.
Right. And those are the folks that have, you know, the, you know, other sources of income to where they don't have to worry about their profitability.
Yeah.
You know, or whether, you know, or whether their business is actually sustainable, who enter a lot here because that's better for them on their taxes, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so there's, you know, but there's, I think there's a lot more people in the industry struggling than we can tell via social media.
Yeah.
Because social, like the happy, that's the happy place for everybody. And like I was saying, this is somebody else's hobby, so you have to make it fun.
Yeah.
You can't be, you know, you can't be
right.
Debbie Downer who's like, this
Right.
sucks. You know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's very hard.
It is very hard.
It's hard.
Totally.
So,
well, this is
some
so,
people ask, well, why do you still do?
It's so interesting. We're running out of time, but I wanted to also talk about your UFO orphan adoption, because that's actually the first time I saw you was when you were doing one of these live, where you put stuff up. And I found it really interesting and amazing that you were doing this. Was this so it's on Facebook, right? Do you just do it on Facebook?
Yeah, it's on Facebook.
And it's stuff from the studio, and you sell it, and like whoever says yes first, right? Is that how it goes?
Yeah. So
I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, the orphan adoptions are, you know, those are a lot of fun. And it's basically like the stuff that just piles up in the studio that I'm never going to use.
Yeah.
You know? And you know, it just gets to a point. It's like a garage sale almost, but it's just all stuff. So it's the stuff that I don't want to look at anymore.
Yeah.
And other people make use of it. I'm actually working on another orphan adoption that I'm hopefully going to do in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, very cool. Will you give me a little heads up, and I'll let or post it on our Facebook group. I don't know if you're part of the Just Wanna Quilt Facebook group, but if you can post things there. I'm very like, people are always like, are you allowed to put? It's like, yeah, you can put anything up, anything you want. So let people know that you're doing it, because I would love to, you know, have people experience it. And obviously we're a tiny group, we're not huge, but it's I think it would be really fun. I had so much fun watching it last time. It was crazy. Sort of what happened.
Nuts.
Yeah,
we're gonna do it a little bit differently this year, because like the adoption is fun, but the process behind the scenes is broken, and so I'm trying to fix the behind the scenes process.
How do you get do you have to then have them, like if someone adopts it, then how do you get their email, and I mean, how do you get their mailing address and all that? That seems like a lot of logistics that would be hard.
Yeah. What I do up front is I tell people, if you're going to be part of the adoption, you have to create an account on my website, you have to put in address, because I'm not going to chase people.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, right. Like, that's really interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
And the thing is at the end of the adoption, we have to like take everything that people adopted. Like there's a spreadsheet, and
oh my gosh.
you know, and we have to like gather it up, and then we have to pack it and weigh it and get a shipping estimate, and then add all that stuff up and send people invoices. And so it's that process that's been very
that's a lot.
Very challenging. And so I'm actually trying a new software package that actually is for LuLaRoe sellers. If you're familiar with
it's
LuLaRoe.
For what?
So you know LuLaRoe, that's like one of the those like clothing, online clothing companies, or like Scentsy or Paparazzi or or Flip Scent. All those people, they have software that they use to kind of manage their online Facebook sales. So I'm trying one of those software packages to see if that's going to work.
Interesting. What's their name? Can you spell it for me? What's their name?
So the name of like where I got the idea from is LuLaRoe, and that's LuLaRoe. LuLaRoe. It's that legging company. Like they make all the funky leggings.
Yeah. Right. I know that. Like okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Weird.
So
LuLaRoe clothing. Lulu and Roe clothing.
LuLaRoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, LuLaRoe. And so,
their
consultants use a particular kind of software to kind of manage, because their inventory is funky in that you don't know what you're getting. Like you don't know what the prints are.
Sorry. I just went on their website. Hold on just a second. It just made something stop. Okay, I can't go to the website because it makes the song start.
Oh.
Okay, well, we will be dealing with that one next. So tell me, and I gotta go in 4 minutes. But tell me about. I'm gonna try it again, but see if I can. Can I mute it? I hate websites that do that because like you're just gonna get in trouble, All right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So they say. So you said. Tell me again about why you went with them in terms of their. Interesting. Okay. And then they had software that they. Interesting.
So what happens with them is, that when their consultants order from them, you can't say, I want 6 blue shirts in medium and 5 small. All you can do is say, I want 5 random prints, right? And so it's very hard to inventory management that way when you have kind of random things kind of coming in.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what my orphan adoption is.
Right.
I have random inventory of all random stuff, and so they have software that they use to manage that random inventory, and so I'm trying to use that same concept or that same application.
I would love for you to come on and talk once you do it again. Will you come back and talk to us about how it went? Because I'm really interested in what we are trying to do, and I do need to talk to you about like what we're doing. Maybe you can strategize. So can we chat again soon? Because we're moving into a new territory of what we're doing, and one of the ideas is to create kind of a consignment shop like thing, because we see these really tiny micro businesses where they're struggling, so they can sort of try things out without having to invest a lot of time and money, that they can kind of put their stuff up kind of like Etsy, but not really. But we're also trying to understand software, which I'm trying to understand that the selling side of it without getting like a lot of like getting too deep into it,
Right.
So
yeah, I would be happy to come back and talk about it after this adoption event.
Yeah,
so
I think that would be great. Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been like the fastest 2 hours ever. And so lovely. Can we find time to chat again? And what I'd love to talk about next time is kind of where we are as a project and what we should be experimenting with, because this is an experiment. It's not a business. And what we should be thinking about trying to understand. We did the booth. Oh my God. Again, it almost killed me. But we did a booth. We understand like the work of a booth now. But now we really are trying to understand the different mechanisms for income. And so I would love for you to take us through that and understand what the pitfalls are and the strategies on how we do this that you do all the time. It'd be really great.
Yeah. Would absolutely love to talk to you about that.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah,
just sign up again and we'll do part 2.
All right, Elizabeth. Good talking to you.
You are awesome. Do you want to review this before I post it? Is it okay to post it? You want to review it?
Are you going to post the full 2 hours?
Yeah, people like the 2 hours. Yeah. Our longest one was Tula Pink and Mary Fawn's for 2.5 hours. They were at the house.
Oh, my God.
It was crazy. It's our most popular one. It's weird. And Angie Wilson of the Gnome Angel, she came for almost 2 hours. People like the long ones. It's weird. They like the short ones, too. They like the short ones. They like the 20-minute ones, too. But sometimes, sometimes you got a lot to say,
Yeah. All right, well, put it up. I don't think I said anything too controversial.
No, you didn't at all. And I listen again just to make sure. So if there's anything that I think, but I didn't see anything. I didn't list anything that I thought was a problem. So you're just amazing and awesome and incredible. So, but I'll let you know. We process them. It takes us a little time, and then we'll post it. Cool.
Awesome.
All right, so I still want to talk to you again. It's going to be all about what we should be doing next because I'm a little overwhelmed by all of it. So it would be great. Yeah, maybe I have you and Cheryl on together. We should do that. That would be so much fun. Oh my God, it would be insane. All right, you're wonderful. I hope you have a good day. I hope you have a lovely day.
Yeah, you have a great day. I've got to go to the bank and then back to the studio. Woo-hoo!
Nice. Good job. Yes. Awesome. All right, thanks, Ebony. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend-Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.